Well, it's 11 o'clock, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. Thank you for everybody who's in attendance today. This is our Board of Aldermen regular meeting for Wednesday, April 5th, 2023. And with that, we're going to move on to the invocation, and that is Alderman Plattall.
Bless this town, and may it remain a beautiful and friendly place to live. We pray that this board makes fair and informed decisions this afternoon. We also pray that our police officers, firefighters, and members of our armed services here and around the world remain safe as they risk so much for our security. We also pray that our town be spared the ravages of hurricanes and other natural disasters, and that everyone associated with the town remains safe and secure. Amen.
Thank you.
Now, we'll say the pledge.
Okay, with that, I'm going to ask for an approval of the agenda.
Mayor,
Yes.
can I respectfully request to amend today's agenda to first to move the manager's report under following public presentations and hearings to allow them to go first so that they can leave if they so choose. And then to also add a new item under new business to read North Carolina Resilient Coastal Communities Program with presentation by W.K. Dixon on projects identified for North Topsail Beach and possible action via resolution to apply for grant funding of priority projects.
I didn't write all that down. So
What she said?
how about just storm resilient projects, possible grant? Can I say that?
Presentation by W.K. Dixon and potential resolution on grant funding opportunities.
Okay.
Nancy will catch
There
it.
you go.
That will be a new business item.
D.
And Madam Mayor, I'd also like to remove item 9C about the bike lane. The NCDOT has not sent me some information. They've had some medical delays, so if we could postpone that to the next month.
Yep, I'm trying to find that one.
Roman numeral 9C.
Oh, I see it. Okay.
And then just a question,
No, I
Mayor.
don't see it either.
I had a couple of questions.
Oh, right here.
For the finance group, which I think it can stay on the consent agenda, but when we go through that thing, I just had a couple of questions to ask Kayla.
So do you want to call that out of the consent agenda?
I don't know if it's necessary. It's only gonna take a couple of minutes. I just hit some clarifications and that kind of stuff.
From a procedure perspective, do we need to call it out?
Well, if you just have a couple questions, you could ask those questions prior to passing it, but if you want to discuss it at all, you'd have to pull it off the consent agenda. Unless you just want to go ahead and ask the questions before.
Before I ask.
That's probably the better way to do it.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to have the minutes come out of the consent agenda. There are a couple of corrections we need to make with the minutes. Put them under continuing business somewhere.
Are they just typos, Mike?
A couple of typos, and one is context.
Okay.
So that'd be the new continuing business C.
Yep, that would be the new C. Okay. Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the updated agenda?
Motion to approve?
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any additional discussion? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, so then what we're going to do is move on to the public hearings with Ms. Hill. So I'm going to request a motion to open the public hearing.
Move to open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And this hearing is for the electric vehicle charging station.
At 2181 New River Inlet Road.
Oh, you know what, Miss? I actually should have gone to open forum, but I would prefer to do that after the public hearings as well, if everybody
Yeah,
is
just
okay with that.
to allow them to leave, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Unless someone has an open forum comment relative to that public hearing or to that subject, unless they're going to have an opportunity to speak during the public hearing. Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Sorry, Ms. Hill, go ahead. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I stay confused anymore, so I'm right there with you. Put that one away. Chris Carrigan has submitted a special use permit application for an EV charging, for 2 EV charging stations at 2181 New River Inlet Road, which is the Palm Tree Market, Tiki Bar and Restaurant. The meter panel combination will be installed at the south end of the bar outside, approximately 5 feet above the ground level. The charging units will be mounted at ground level. The particular ones that they've selected are also flood-proof or flood-resistant, which is very exciting to see that evolution. The property zone B1 business district, the land use is commercial. To the north, property zoned R8, to the east is R8, to the south is R5 topsoil reef, and to the west is zoned R10 single family. Site improvements include a convenience store, cold storage, and a bar, 12 by 12 shed. The site, or the property is actually 2 parcels. Mr. Ken Barber of Jones Onslow had said that he sees no concern serving this EV charger. Fire Chief Sword said if it has the safety bollards in place, he sees no issues. Ralph Allen, building inspector, said site plan needs to reflect a painted accessible parking space with reserved HC parking sign installed to comply with the North Carolina Building Code ADA requirements. A hardwired 120-volt emergency exit sign with emergency lighting will be required on the exit door in the grocery store. The EV charging stations are not listed in Table 4-1 use table, which is why there's a follow-up report. Pursuant to the UDO 2.15 paragraph D, the EV charging station will require minor site plan review approval, which goes to all the town departments and the other TRC members to ensure that standard parking space dimensions are still available after installation, and that wheel stops are added if needed. Also confirming the number of overall EV spaces, which we said are 2. Additionally, the EV installations will need to meet NC Building Code and town flood regulations. All EV systems will be installed above the base flood elevation +2 or waterproofed pursuant to our flood regs, which is consistent with FEMA protecting building utility systems, 44 CFR 60.3, V-zone certification, elevation certificates based on construction drawings. For the Cameron Land Use Plan, the property zone mixed use business, and I think that's about it. There's a little site plan, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think it's on page 6 of the staff report. That indicates the 4 spaces in the 200 amp panel for the double charger, and also the following pages include the manufacturer's information on the charging stations themselves, the level 2s. So Mr. Kerrigan is here, and also Tom Wellen. No, you're.
I'm Larry Straub.
Sorry.
I don't know if Tom's here. Only thing I know how to do is plug them in.
You just plug them in. Okay, sorry. Tom's not here? All right.
I don't believe so.
And I got Charles Riggs calling me. He must know we're having a planning board meeting. All right, so if you have any questions for me, I'll be glad to answer them as best I can. If not, Mr. Kerrigan's here if you'd like to ask him any questions.
So I just have one question. It looks like our building inspector and our fire chief had some items that they want to make sure are completed with this project?
That's part of the application, yes. When they
Okay.
come to submit their applications for electrical and zoning permits, then yes, those would be conditions.
Okay, that was my only question.
Yeah, and, you know, for the electrical vehicles, 90% of the owners charge their vehicles at home, but with 80 to 90% of our housing stock being rental market, I think that this would certainly provide a service
Certainly, I agree.
for visiting guests. I checked with some of the neighboring towns, to see what they had in their code, and they're proceeding without addressing EV stations in their ordinance. So, from all that I have, all the background information that I've read, certainly from the American Planning Association, is that there's really we want to try to accommodate the EV charging stations, you know, keeping in mind safety, but also trying to accommodate owners of electric vehicles as much as possible, without getting them mired down in red tape. So,
Yeah, I think it would be good if we could get this into our streamlined permitting process, and folks who are requesting EV chargers didn't have to go through special hearings.
that'll be in my second report, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Questions from the
Yeah,
board?
just a couple on the, I know we got two separate hearings, all right? On this one, when I'm looking at the comments that you've got on there, it says recommended text amendment. We don't need to amend the text to grant their application, correct?
Technically, no. If you would have done the first one first, if you would have approved the text amendment first, then they could technically have slid out the door.
Okay, I mean,
But by putting these together,
Right.
it's kind of nice doing it this way, because it makes all of you aware, as well as the rest of the citizens, anyone that's listening or watching this, aware that we're going to be supporting and promoting EV stations.
Okay, that wasn't my question. My question was more.
Sorry, I misunderstood you.
No, that's fine. Is when I'm looking at this, I have absolutely no problem with approving what you've got. No issues with that at all. But the issue, and I go back to what the mayor just talked about putting this in a process. The second one is an issue of first impression for this board that we're seeing in this meeting. So I know that you probably scrubbed it out.
Right.
Okay, and is there, you know, I guess what I'm looking at it is, we want to make sure that we do it right the first time.
Correct.
And if, you know, and I don't know how much the planning board, I assume this came to the planning board because there was a request to put the charging station in, not the other way around. So I guess my question would be, for you and for the board is, no problem at all approving this, let them go forward. I support what the mayor talked about making this a streamlined process. My question is, do we know enough right now to accept the changes there and know that we're not going to be making different changes a month from now because we didn't do the things that you were talking about? That's all my question
Well,
is.
I believe that we have approved charging stations in other places in North Topsail Beach. I think the reason that this one came is because it's our first commercial property. Would that be correct, Ms. Hill?
That's true, and it's really an accessory, and I think I saw on the agenda somewhere where it said principal use or something like that. It would actually be an accessory use to the palm tree market that he has. So anytime that there's a change in commercial property, you kind of want to, unless it's otherwise permitted by right, we want to make sure that the planning board's aware of it and that the Board of Aldermen are aware of it, to where that if you did have any concerns, we could flesh those out and address those.
But I guess where I'm going with this is, you know, when it comes time to vote, I am for granting them what they need to get it done. My question is more of a simple one, is that from a planning board standpoint and a town standpoint, have we put everything in these changes that we're talking about that are going to be necessary to make sure that this gets streamlined going forward? In other words, I know that it was dropped on you guys as a one-off, hey, here's the first commercial one.
Right.
Not, I as a planning board decided we wanted to look at this for commercial. So that, right, that's all I'm saying is, have we had the time to vet this thing so that you're comfortable with the language that you're recommending?
In the ordinance.
In
You're
the
talking about
ordinance,
the
right.
ordinance.
Actually, we've kind of been, when I say we, actually, when we've been,
Yeah, I'm
I've been
raising my
mulling it
hand.
around for quite some, actually, we've been mulling it around for quite some time. The town manager had brought up EV stations probably about 6 to 9 months ago. So it is something that we have, even considered from a town-operated perspective.
Like I said, and we can vote on this one, I'm just saying,
Well,
I just
yeah.
wanted to make sure that we didn't have to change the
Rick,
language.
Rick,
Yes.
all good questions, all good discussions, but right now, the public hearing that's open is about that gentleman's, approval for that gentleman's charging station
Right.
at the Palm Tree Market. Public presentation B is the one that we're talking about now.
Do you have any questions for Ms. Hill on this
No,
specific
I
agenda
support it.
item?
They've
Yes.
done their homework, I support it.
Mayor Pro Tem?
So I'm having a little trouble hearing with my cold. So you described 3 levels of charging stations. Are you proposing one of the three? Or is that in the next?
The type of charging station that they will be installing is a level 2, and a level 2 runs
Okay.
on
All right, I
240.
see that, yeah.
And I'll go over those real quick. For the level 1s, they're typical house current 120. If I had my cord out in the car, I could plug it into a typical outlet. The 240 is like your dryer connection with
Yeah,
the three
I
little,
understand,
the three
understand,
oddballs.
yeah.
And then that type 3 is what you see typically. I have it listed on there. I doubt if we will ever see it in North Topsail Beach, but I listed it for continuity. Those are typically what you see on the interstate that look like humongous gas stations.
So my second question is, has the state established standards for charging stations? And if so, do these plans meet those state standards?
I will say yes, and it goes to the electrical code as well. So when they submit their application, they're going to have to meet the electrical code as well as the other items, the other conditions that the building inspector requested as part of the special use permit.
Any
Yeah.
other questions from the board? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I had one question. These charging stations going to be open to the general public, or are they going to be limited to customers of the businesses?
General public. It takes about 2 hours if they want a full charge.
At the bar.
Thank you.
That just so happens.
Yes, sir.
Madam Clerk, are you able to take down the identity of who answered that question, since this is a public hearing? If not, I kindly ask you to come. Okay. Right. But if you want that to be part of the minutes, which I think it should be, sir, if you could come up, identify yourself.
Sure, I'm Chris Carrigan.
Okay. And the question was, who's it going to be open to?
It's going to be open to the
If it's
general
open
public.
to the
and
general public.
Anybody, you'll hit Google and hopefully they'll, be able to find North Topsail Beach. It'll be the closest
Okay,
EV
thank you.
charger.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, does that assist? Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The board does not have any additional questions, so do we just open it up to anyone in the audience? Brian, yeah?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak? No? Then can I have a motion to
So
close?
moved.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'm going to ask for a motion to approve or deny the charging stations.
Motion to approve?
Any discussion?
May I make a codicil just because of one of the points made up? A motion to approve on the condition that the charging station complies with all applicable law, federal, state, and local.
Okay.
That's what I meant.
Well, I heard you say it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Congratulations, Chris.
Thank you.
We got our first one. Yay!
Thanks for all your work.
Hey, thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
Oh, no, you have to stay now.
Oh, I can stay?
No, you can go.
That's the other condition.
Thank you.
All right.
So the second public hearing, again, is Ms. Hill, and it's a text amendment to the UDO regarding the electric vehicle charging stations. So may I please have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We are open.
Okay, so as all of you know, in the UDO, there in Article 4, there's a list of permitted and special uses. So if it's permitted by right, then it's handled on a staff administrative level. It's like, this is my vision, sorry. It's handled on a staff level. And so if it's a special use, of course, it comes before the planning board for a recommendation and for the board of aldermen for a public hearing. So with the level ones, as I mentioned before, they're 120 volts. They take about 12 hours to charge. Typically, these are what you see in households. Level 2 chargers can be freestanding or hanging, and they require 240 volt. Level 2 chargers take about 4 to 8 hours. We are seeing some of these in households as well as what you just saw presented as a commercial. And then the level 3 are the freestanding stations. They require 480 volts, and they take about 30 minutes to charge a vehicle. And I had recommended to amend table 4-1 to allow for EV charging stations 1 and 2 by right in all residential districts, and a charging station 2 and 3 by right in both B1 and B2, to include the appropriate definitions in Article 11. At our last planning board, Mr. DeRazio made a motion to approve. Ms. Dibble seconded the motion, and the motion passed unanimously, 6-0. So if approved, the table of permitted and conditional uses, or the use table, I'm sorry, would be amended as you see indicated in the staff report, where the level 1 would be permitted in all residential districts with the use standard, and level 2 the same, to include B1 and B2, and for level 3 would just be B1 and B2. And then the use standards would be indicated that for level 1 may be allowed in residential as accessory to the primary permitted use. Such stations could be located not just for single family, but also duplexes, multifamily, and designated as private restricted use only. They must meet the requirements in Article 7 for flood, building, electrical, and accessibility codes. For the charging stations for level 2, they may be allowed in residential or commercial. Such stations located in single family, two family, multifamily land uses shall be designated as private restricted use only, and they must meet the Article 7 building, electrical, and accessibility codes as well. For level 3, they may be allowed in commercial districts, and they must meet the requirements of Article 7 building, electrical, and accessibility codes.
I had a question. You just said level 2 would be private restricted. We just heard
For residential,
okay, but not for commercial.
not for commercial.
Okay, can we mandate, so to speak, that the commercial level 2 be open to the public, or can they still make them private in this scenario?
Can I ask you a question? What would be the purpose of having a private EV charging station on commercial property?
In case it was a situation where they had some commercial vehicles that were just EVs and they only wanted to use them for their commercial vehicles?
We certainly could add that if it's commercial, that it's open to the public.
I would
not be
oppose
for
that.
Yeah.
That's a taking of property.
We'll have that situation maybe on top of the beach.
Right.
Yeah. To me, if it's by nature of it being commercial, makes it open to the public. Unless you have like a private bar, right? I have an open bar or I have a private bar.
Like I said, I would be opposed to that. Can I just real quick questions? Okay, and I love the conditions that you had. I'm looking back at the other one where the chief said, if safety bollards are in place, I see new issues. Ralph went in. I'm assuming all those things would still apply under what you guys are doing anyway.
We certainly could add that to the commercial, the conditions to the commercial.
No, I thought those were great conditions, like having the bollards in and Ralph's comments and stuff like that. I just want to make sure by passing this, we don't then bypass the things that the public safety people think are necessary. That was my only comment.
Well, and they may,
Still gotta pull a permit, right?
yeah, I was gonna say,
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, sure.
well, you guys got it there. You still have to pull the permit. Those things would still apply, and I think it's better to have all of those details hashed out in the permit process, not with the ordinance, because then we'd be constantly.
No, my issue is only that we weren't precluded from doing those things by passing the ordinance. That was my question.
Well, and if I can say, when you're paying $20,000 for a piece of equipment, you're going to put a bollard up. You
Does
know, so there are standards, standards, and there are, I guess, industry standards that are kind of, we're trying to catch up with ourselves. Even after the past 4 years, if you go online and you read anything, and I had done a Google search on, I was trying to see what trouble or what problems like municipalities have faced with EV stations. I didn't see any of those. What I saw is that some of the chargers, they didn't work or they weren't functioning or whatever. There's not enough of them, so. And as I mentioned before, that the APA and some of the government documents that I had read are really trying to encourage local governments to promote EV charging stations rather than get them mired down in the red tape.
Okay, I mean, my comment was just what the mayor just said is, we are not precluding having a permitting process that the public safety people could weigh in on and putting in, ballards, or I think that Ralph had put in there spacing. We're not making it, avoiding the permitting process by passing this is my only question.
So, Deb, I only have one question, and it relates to the residential homes that
Right.
are submitting permits to do that.
Right.
Have we been able to come up with a solution that allows it to be below base flood, or does it have to be above base flood and they run a long cord?
So far, we've had to have them elevate. I think that there was one system that was put in that we've done, and it had to be elevated. And I think we've had we've had some so far. There were two systems. There have been some so far where they've done the outlets, and so those outlets have had to be elevated. And it's mostly, I think the outlets are to accommodate the rental guest. Different people carry their chargers with them,
Okay,
so it's an amenity for
I got you.
staying with
So most
that property.
of the residential homes are just putting an outlet in? Most of the residential homes are just putting an outlet in
Yes.
to accommodate their guests?
Yes, typically in the drive, and it's in a metal covered box.
Okay.
You'll see it, and it'll be like this side. There was one that I would have trouble reaching, and so when Ralph and I were talking, we'd said that they'd probably put like a little wooden step there, just like they do with the HVAC stands.
Right,
So
okay. Does the board have any additional questions? Okay, can I make a motion to? Well, is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak? No. Okay, motion to close the public hearing, please.
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then may I ask for a motion to approve or deny the text amendment as presented?
Motion to approve as presented?
Second.
Any additional discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
thank you very much.
Thank you, Deb. Okay, now if I got this right, then I'm going to ask for open forum if there's anybody that would like to speak at this time. Okay. Then we're going to go on to Ms. Darian with the manager's report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
First off, the beach projects. Phase 5, ST Wooten completed their work with the Phase 5 project. Approximately 178,305 cubic yards have been placed as of March 10th during this particular segment of the project, with approximately 300,000 cubic yards placed in total. CM Mitchell has started Tranche 2 of the project and is actively hauling sand as we speak. As of April 3rd, they had placed 58,336 cubic yards of sand, and they will continue to haul sand and place it through the end of this month. Phase 1, ST Wooten worked through March 30th to place 24,419 cubic yards of sand. The area immediate to the south of the reef received sand that included buildings 5, 6, 7, and 8 to include 100 feet south of the reef. We received notice from the state at the end of day on Friday, March 31st, that they had granted a one-time extension of the permitted moratorium to allow work through April 14th. Fran has reached out to ST Wooten to determine if they can resume. They expressed concern at this point with working further into the season because of seasonal and traffic issues. So they will finish the remaining amount of work that the Board of Aldermen has approved when we resume back up in the fall following turtle season. BA4 work was completed at beach access number 4 as of March 31st. 2,017 cubic yards of sand have been placed. That project has now been completed and the Hatteras ramp has been placed back into operation. Richard Peters Park, renovations continued at the park. We will be scheduling next painting the outside of the building and the playground swings, painting those as well. Fire station replacement, since our last meeting, I've made applications for all the permits at this point. We have a meeting scheduled next week with the architect to complete a page-by-page review of the documents, and I will be working on preparation of IFB documents. The North Topsail Beach Music Festival, as you all are aware, a lot of work went into with staff with the scheduled festival that was scheduled for April 1st. Leading up to the event, we had meetings with the vendor that manages the bands concerning the weather. There was a great amount of concern for the wind gusts that were predicted, as well as possibilities of tornado warnings. The decision was ultimately made to cancel the event in advance so we can get, we were able to get $15,000 back on the contract that we had signed for the bands, and was able to give all ticket holders a 100% refund on their purchased tickets. All in all, we sold 181 tickets. That included 6 children under 12 that were, of course, free of charge. So $5,250 in ticket sales total revenue that we would have received. The vendor indicated historically there are a lot of people that show up the day of the event. You know, they decide to wait for the weather, of course, to see, and we were getting calls asking a lot of questions, asking if we were going to still hold the event. So people were waiting to purchase tickets at the last minute, which is understandable. All in all, the unrecoverable total cost for the concert was $3,387. That again represents the $3,000 that went for the contract for the bands, and then $387 for the trolley service. The trolley service gave us 50% back, and we have a 50% credit for a future event. Budget, the next round of budget meetings are coming up for fiscal year 23-24, April 19th and April 20th. We're scheduled from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. here at Town Hall. May 10th, of course, is the public hearing on the budget to be held at 1 p.m. at Town Hall. And June 7th, we plan to do the ordinance adoption for the budget. Of course, as I've stated before, we're scheduled for 2 days, but of course, if we finish everything in the first round days, we do not have to proceed into the second days that are scheduled. Those are just there as needed. We also scheduled allow more time to be allowed if should we need an additional workshop in May. Last item is the shrimp trawler debris in the inlet. I've continued to follow up with the North Carolina Coastal Federation, and they've been working with several partners and their contractor to determine the feasibility of removing as much as possible of the metal rigging from the sunken shrimp trawler in a New River Inlet. They are contracting with commercial divers at this point to remove the rigging to the extent possible that they can. They may be able to work on a debris removal in the next couple of weeks, so I'm letting you know now. So you may see that coming online sooner rather than later. They have worked with this particular contractor that's going to be doing this work with over 100, removing 100 vessels along the coast since 2021. So they are an experienced contractor. I've mentioned before, and I'll say it again, that I'm thankful to the Coastal Federation for their assistance and willingness to allocate the funds to fully fund this removal. We've worked throughout the last several months for this upcoming project. And I'll, of course, provide updates and firmer timelines as we move closer to getting the project done.
I just had a couple questions. As it relates to Phase 1, I'm thrilled that we were able to get that project started and have some sand being placed there. I do have significant concerns also as it relates to just past Topsail Reef through Dolphin Shores and St. Regis and the condos there. It's not an area of the beach where we've historically been able to do anything, and I think that erosion it's worsening in that area, and that's just my opinion. For BA4, will they be planting that as well?
No.
No planting, just the
No.
sand? Okay, I wasn't sure about that. All right, that's all I had. Yes, sir.
I was gonna ask a question. What's gonna happen to all the sand on BA4, I'm sorry, the debris that's in the two piles?
gravelly sand.
The gravelly sand.
Yeah.
I was just curious because the BA looks great except for the two big
Well,
giant
the
piles
issue
of
is,
gravel.
from the beginning, is that sand, and Fran, correct me if I'm wrong, but it has to stay within that area of environmental concern. So it was always proposed that it would be positioned on that site, and that's what we proposed to the county, was showing them on a map where it would be placed. Now, is it a lot? It looks
Looks like a
pretty
lot of
high,
sand.
and I know Fran is planning on visiting that site following today's meeting. I have asked if we could possibly smooth that out, and but you know, there is a concern of course, if we do that, then you know, do we make it problematic for trucks with the sand, people with vehicles getting stuck?
Yes.
So we have to be very careful with any actions that we do take going forward. But we are very limited on what we can do, because that sand has to stay in the area.
Well, hopefully, what we'll see is all the kids, instead of climbing on the dunes, they'll climb on that big pile of sand.
Sign up.
Only if you put a sign up there that says "Stay off the dunes," $500 fine. We could make it like a photo booth.
Photo op?
Yeah. There you go.
Does anybody have any additional questions for Ms. Tarian?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's for Alice or not. The Phase 1, when I was walking yesterday, I noticed there was still some excavation going on with digging into the ocean, and it looked like every other scoop was coming up, and they were just moving it from one part of the water to another, and then there was some that was being dumped on the beach, and I wasn't quite sure what was going on there.
Well, that is the Reefs project. There's been two projects going on simultaneously in that area. One is the Reefs project, and that's the one you're asking about. They're actually doing sandbags. So they're pumping from out in the water and piping water in to fill the sandbags.
Any additional questions for Ms. Tarian? Well, thank you, that's good. Mhm. Okay, so then we're gonna move on to the next item, which is the consent agenda, so. Oh, I skipped Fran. Where'd Fran go? Right here, do you wanna sit up here? So we'll have our coastal engineer update.
Hello, everybody, the board. And I was out there this morning looking at BA4 and the Topsail Reef project. And I'm going to go after as soon as the fog lifts. It was pretty, so I can get a better view. This is the Topsail, North Topsail Beach coastal update for this month, April. And then please keep in mind that when I developed these slideshows, they're about 10 days previous to today. So a lot of things have changed since this presentation. Next slide, Ricky. So this is just an overview of the town's shoreline from New River Inlet to the north down to the Surf City limit to the south. We have the 5-phase shorelines, phase 1 up to the north, northeast, and then phase 5 down in the southwest. And, basically, there's some activity pretty much in all the phases, or even some active construction or planning. We have, the phase one, we just, as Alice mentioned, the sand project, and then there's ongoing, the sandbag project as well. And then just recently, the Army Corps of Engineers finished placing their material up in phase one. And then we had the Onslow County Beach Access 4, and that was in phase 3. And then the phase 5 project that's going on, it's going well. And then the state grant in phase 4. And then I'll touch upon that as well. Next slide, please. This is the Corps project that they have finished. It finished several weeks ago, but I wanted to kind of keep it in there. It does seem like a long time ago, but it really, they just, just the beginning of March, they were packing up their material. They put about 160,000 cubic yards of material. It looked really nice, and these photos are, kind of immediately post-construction. It looked really nice there. As the board has mentioned, this material it's good beach-compatible sand, great color. It is compatible. It's a tad on the finer side, and it does it moves a little more easily than we'd like. And it has moved, and even out there now, under these kind of conditions, we get these windy conditions in the spring, and those winds and waves where you can push the sand around quite a bit. The next slide, please. And then, so this is just an overall schematic, and as Alice mentioned, they did go farther south of here, and this is where the truck hauled sand that the town worked with. We placed materials, basically the midpoint of the Topsail Reef villas, Topsail Reef condominium, excuse me. Basically buildings, 1 through 4 are the top, are the northeast buildings, and 5 through 8 are the southwest buildings. They always knew that the production rate was going to be slower here than in phase 5. It's a little farther truck haul. It was just a little more difficult, that beach access. And then they were actually working, it was pretty difficult because the Topsail Reef condos, they had their sandbag refilling, pretty much occurring, now. And so there was a lot of heavy equipment up there. And then the sandbag operation is that they're hauling in the sand. It's nice sand from the sand mine. It's some nice coarse stuff. And then they're sucking water out of the ocean with the trash pump. And then they're filling the bags in place. And they're kind of working along there. And they're still up there now. And there are piles of sand everywhere in the parking lot. But the truck haulers, ST Wooten, they did get, they put material about 100 feet south of the Topsail Reef condos. And, going out there this morning, that material is spreading south. So it does look like, we're going to have spreading north and south. But it is good to see that material is spreading south. And even ST Wooten was complaining about how their loss rate when you haul, material, you maybe haul 1,000 cubic yards, and when you place it, the way we pay them, they have to, put in it. They're going to lose they're going to lose some volume, maybe, and at phase 5, their losses were very minimal. Where if they hauled 1,000 cubic yards, they could, get surveyed and paid for 950. Up near the phase 1. Project on Topsail Reef, there was much more difficulty, and they were having more losses, and that was another reason why they weren't as they weren't as efficient. When they even said that they felt like they were kind of just breaking even on the cost, and it's difficult. And we have gone into, and I've talked, paying for in volume, the survey pay in volume is one way, and you can actually pay based on truck tickets, but then you need someone there to count. Yes, exactly. It's incredibly just difficult and a big pain. And I know Alderman Leonard is shaking his head. He's got some experience with it. I do too. But the good thing is, as soon as the farther southwest of the the topsoil roof condos, it's a little more tucked away, and they are more confident that when they put material there, we will be able to get it surveyed in place, so they will get paid.
Fran, just before you leave this
Yeah.
slide, the core sand that was placed earlier, I think, can you assure us and the audience, that sand is still in the sand system offshore of the reef and can come back up on the dry sand beach during the year as conditions change, correct? It's not just lost forever, correct?
Correct. Usually they build the profile, they build it out, and it's just easier for them to build it out, and then they'll let Mother Nature kind of take care of it. That sand stays in the surf zone, when you go out there and you're in waist deep water and chest high water, and you can kind of, the sandbars and things. Some of that material may go straight back into the inlet, and that will not come back probably. But no, there will be a good amount of material, that's why I went out there this morning and I saw some good spreading to the south. That I was, it was good, because right now we do get a lot of systems, windy conditions from the southwest that's pushing stuff to the north. But in general, if we can get by the windy spring, then we get to the more mild, May, June, July, pre-hurricane, or obviously that is hurricane, but it's really not the kind of the peak hurricane where we're really worried about it. But that's when, there is the material spreading north and south, and it is staying within the surf zone. It's not going, beyond, 10 feet of water.
For semantics, how about saying potential hurricane season?
Yes.
Just stop after the word hurricane.
Okay. Sorry. Well, and then hurricane season is, 6 months long, but really, it's really August when it's really kind of the threat ramps up. Okay, next slide, please, Ricky. This one, the Phase 5 project, it's going along really well. They finished going to the north, and then we will start up at the north and head into Phase 4 all the way kind of up to where we head onto the island here in November. And then they're still working south, south of Gray Street. But it is, it's about 2.5 miles of beach have been placed so far, and I'm not sure if you've been down there, but it's really nice, and it's quite the walk if you walk that whole area, and that's just a nice big. It's just really worked out well. It's a nice, and that sand should actually spread south and spread north. Will be spreading benefits, good spreading benefits. And then this morning, Matt Mitchell with CM Mitchell, he actually asked to work into May for an extension, and I have not even been able to bring that up with the town manager or the board. Usually, previously a couple years ago, the board was fine with them working into May, and so we can get with that. And I would think that the agencies would be fine with that as well. We would have to bring in the turtle monitoring, where the turtle, yes, Alderman, yes, you're aware, Alderman Plettle is. We'd have the turtle folks have to go in and give and then we'd be very, and we'd make sure, and we're going to have a meeting. We'll have a meeting with the agencies and basically say that no machinery can be out there at all until that turtle check has been done.
And I would
Yeah,
also,
they-
go ahead,
oh.
Glenn.
In the past, when they've done that, the agencies we've worked with have been very good at doing it, stopping work until they've got the all clear, or if they've found a turtle on the beach, they've marked it all off and waited for us to get out there and everything. They were really good partners with us.
Yeah, great, yep, so.
If the time extension was granted, how many approximate cubic yards additional would be placed?
He felt like maybe about 40,000 cubic yards additional.
Well, and I would only ask, as we're starting to get into the vacation rental season now, so we just need to make sure we have updates on our webpage, so when visitors are coming, they have an idea that there's still an active project going on there. I mean, I don't think we should be able to, I'm not saying addresses or anything, but they should know that is being worked on, or you'll get
Sure,
phone
okay.
calls when they get here.
Right, yes, and yeah, because even I was out at, the Onslow County Beach Access 4 today, and there was quite a few cars out there already in the morning.
So is there a consensus from the board to press forward?
Absolutely.
Yep. Sooner the better.
Next slide, please, Ricky. And then here's the phase 4. Actually the permit for the phase 4 was issued today. So this, the permitting is all in place for that phase 4. So that's good. That's good. And this project will start in November, and it's about 325,000 cubic yards, and it will head right up to where we are right now. As soon as we head onto the beach, it's about 2.5 miles of shoreline, and it'll be the beach nourishment, not the dune nourishment.
Has there been discussion with CM Mitchell about stockpiling for phase 4 in advance of the November timeframe?
He
Any more
did
discussion?
mention that as well today, and then there's double handling, and there are some additional costs, so that will hit. We're gonna have to bring down our volume a little bit, because obviously with the FEMA projects, they say, okay, you've got 15,000 cubic yards, bid it competitively, make sure everything's, and then we will pay for that 15,000. For the state grant, they're saying you have 10 million, you cannot go over that. So if the sand gets more expensive, then we have to put less sand out. So I told CM Mitchell to get us some numbers, and the board we've considered that before for the dune hall a couple years ago, and they just kind of gave us numbers and yeah, he says he's got plenty of room on his property, just right in Sneed's Ferry, that. So yeah, I told him to get us some numbers, and we can evaluate that.
Perfect. Thank you.
I guess I'm lost on the numbers. I know we got a grant of 10.5, up to 10.5.
Yes.
I thought when the bids came in, they were substantially less than 10.5. The state doesn't care, right? We've got 10.5 million to use. Is that why he's saying he's got room? Is because I thought his bid was in the 9 million something?
No, for the alternate discretionary bid, which
Right.
was the phase 4, it was more like 11.
Okay, so we're gonna stay within. My point is, we're stay within the 10.5, and I'm fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. Okay.
Okay, next slide, Ricky. And then this is a pre-project of Onslow County Beach Access 4. It looks really good. I was out there this morning again. They still have that quote-unquote Hatteras ramp, which is, that's the beach access, and we did get that higher, but that still is kind of like a weak spot in terms of we did have some king tides or some storm surge and then some waves. Ideally, it would be great if we could just do one continuous large dune, but now CAMA regulations are a little where they want the dune to be established for 2 years or so, with mature vegetation before you can do a dune overwalk now. So it's a little, but it's a good project, and then that they did get the sand underneath the structure really well. It looks good.
So Fran, I didn't see the wooden Hatteras ramp put back on there yesterday. Is it there now?
Yeah, it's
It's
there.
there. I just didn't see it then.
Yeah,
To the north of the thing, it's just kind of halfway covered up.
Okay. And then my other question, as you talk about, fully vegetated dunes.
Yeah.
If we're not planting it, then that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, and so that is a good point, Mayor. And then especially because we came in a little under budget. Basically, we had about 2,700 cubic yards budgeted, and it came out to just under about 22,000. And then even the material, we thought there would be 859 cubic yards of gravelly sand moved, and there were actually surveyed 721. So we will be under budget. So I'm not sure if you want to, I think planting that with that money that was under budget.
Well, I would just caution that was never part of the original scope that
Does
was
that
agreed
require a
upon
new
to with
permit?
the county and with our applications.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be something they would have to agree to.
Okay.
Well, if it's just asking the county if they would agree to it,
Because it's really not our project.
right, I understand, but I would like to ask them if it's simply asking them. Now, if you're telling me that we have to get new permits and update everything with all the environmental agencies, that's a much larger effort.
But I think to your point though, Mayor, I think the discussion with them is we're not asking you for more money. We're just saying, can we use this money to go a little bit out of scope to do plantings on the dune so that we are creating a dune? I mean, to me, that's the discussion, not we're asking for, because if we're not asking for more money, my discussions with them is they don't care.
What do you think, Ms. Darian?
Well, again, it goes back because these are tied to agreements that were made. So we would have to put that in writing to them and then get a formal approval from them that they agree to amend that scope to do the plantings.
Yes, certainly with the understanding that it will more than likely cause what's been placed there to remain there longer.
Yes.
It should not be a,
No, it would just be a
It won't be an
formality. It
issue.
won't be an issue, but it would be a formality that we
Right.
have to go through.
Process.
Is there, do we have board
That's a
consensus that we
consensus, I
would like
think.
to
Yes.
do that? Yes? Mayor Pro Tem, do you have any concerns?
Yeah, well, they do. I think the county should add additional funds for the planning.
I think what we're saying is,
can't
right now, we're
do
under,
that.
we have some money left over.
If we have enough money, fine, but if we don't, they should cover the difference.
I would suggest, having attended all those meetings, that is a very bad idea to go back and ask them for a few $1,000s more on this project with, we're asking for $200,000 in their budget next year to help on the loan, and the 3% that they're giving us back on the firehouse and stuff. I'm just saying, I think they've been very cooperative in working with us, and I would suggest it's a bad idea to go back and ask them for a few dollars.
Well,
But it is their beach access area, and they are responsible for maintaining it, and if it's not planted, as Fran
But
said,
to
it's
circle
gonna
this
be
back
subject
around.
to erosion.
to circle this back around, that the point came up because the project didn't cost as much as we thought it was gonna
Right.
cost. Therefore, we have extra money. Therefore, we want to use that extra money to put plantings on the
Right.
dunes.
So
I
it
don't
stays.
see where this is truly an issue.
And I think at that point, if they, and I would pose it to them, and if you feel that we should just close it out as is, then we would recommend that you consider a future project and then put the onus on them to do the project.
Right.
Not us to be the person in the middle again.
Okay.
That's
prefer
fine.
not to be
I'm
that
just saying to you, they
going
have a
forward.
real budget problem right now, okay? And I think that what we're able to get from them with the fire tax and with the 200,000 and stuff, they're looking to cut things. And the last thing that I think we want to do as a board is to go to somebody that's got budget issues and ask them
Well,
for a
and I
new
don't think-
project.
I
And
think
this
we're-
is leftover money that
We're
they've
getting
got.
off
It won't
track
be an
because
issue.
I don't think anybody's, we're getting off track. Where nobody's asking for more money. We're gonna start with, Ms. Darian approaching Sharon and just explaining to her where we are with the project and simply asking for approval to, have it planted, which is a slightly larger scope than we initially had.
Can
within
you
the same
get
budget.
me?
Within the same, staying within the same budget.
Yeah.
That's the point,
I
absolutely.
would just ask Fran to get me the cost estimate from Steve Mercer on the plantings
Sure,
and a scope of work.
sure. And then to talk about the gravelly sand mound, I guess that's kind of, it is, and actually the board was joking about it. You could try to screen it. The area of environmental concern is essentially the entire island. So it seemed like the CAMA staff just didn't want it hauled off the island. So, if that material could be screened in a cheaper fashion, or, I'm not sure. We were thinking maybe, screen it and then you could put it on the beach or in a dune. Or, leave it there for, I'm not sure. I guess that's,
There's a lot of costs associated with that.
yes. Yeah, and it's basically, sand itself is not, if you can go to the mine and get it, and get it, it's usually not that expensive, but as soon as you start handling it, double handling it, triple handling it, hauling it, that's where, the costs start really going up. So I guess that's something we can discuss.
Okay.
And I think one more slide, and I think that's it. Thanks. So this just kind of goes over the core project is finished in phase one. Then the Dorian phase one, the FEMA 15,000 cubic yards that was placed. It was more than that was placed, about 10,000 cubic yards more. So we can the town can wrap up that Dorian mitigation up there, and then the New River Inlet Management Master Plan. That's the environmental impact statement. They're still working on getting that out. The notice of intent has gone out, so the timeline has started. The county beach access 4, the gravelly sand mitigation, that's completed. Besides the mound of sand right now, and then we'll look at the vegetation. And then the state grant, that is the permitting, that has been issued just this week. And then the material, the phase 5 continues to go, and they're more like 360,000 cubic yards have been placed overall. And that says continue to April 30, but actually, as we talked about today, we're going to get an extension. And then, continue to work with the finance officer and DEC associates regarding funding and the state-funded projects, and just kind of continuing permanent coordination for all those projects.
Thank you, Fran. Does the board have any additional? Yes, sir.
Fran, do you know if Chapter 4 for the EIS study has been submitted now that the modeling's been done and the NOA has been published?
I do not.
We need to have another conference call with
Mickey.
Army Corps that we've been having monthly, and get a status update with Mickey.
Okay. We'll take that as a follow-up. Thank you, Fran, very much. Okay. Next item, which I think I got it right this time, would be the consent agenda. And Rick, I was going to just ask if you wanted to go through your quick questions.
This will just
before
take, and I saw that the finance officer is here. Nice job on the budget before as a comment. The highlights in reading that and looking at your information, which I thought was very good, are property taxes were already over what we thought we were going to collect. So that's good. And we're probably collected most of what we're going to collect for the year, right? Okay. Interest is up because interest rates are up, and the cash we've got is getting more interest. So, but most of our interest on the other side is not going up because we locked in the interest rates, correct? So that's very good. Sales tax, we're at 1.86, with the whole budget for the year being 1.89, and we're only 3/4 of the way through the year, so I assume that's a positive thing for revenue purposes. Paid parking is gonna be a problem. It's not material right now, but that's down. Doesn't look like it's gonna catch up, right? Is that your thing?
I think it will increase, but I don't think it will hit the projected amount that we anticipate.
Yeah, because we looked at 182 in there, and we've only collected 100, so give or take. Expenses, I was looking at really good. We're at about 60% of the budgeted amount for the year, but we're 75% through the year, so you don't see any glitches going forward. That looks pretty good. Fund 12, we've collected $1 million, budget of $990 on that, and the expenses look good as well. Fund 30 on the accommodation tax, we're at 1.5 of the 2, so we're right on target. That looks like that's going to be a good number. Property taxes, where we talked about, we're fine. And sales tax, we've already collected in 9 months what we projected for the year. So what I read, that is, and thank you again, that was very, very good. Looking good on revenue, expenses are under control, and you don't see any major glitches, knock on wood, going forward. Is that fair? Thank you.
I'll make that motion to approve it.
Second?
Any additional discussion?
Well, the consent agenda's been amended.
Make the motion to approve the amended consent agenda.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Yes.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Caitlin.
I've not met all of you, but I'm Larry Strother, and I lived down in Phase 5, but I was an original member on the BISAC committee, which started last year, and somehow they've got me into this chair position now. And so but the good thing is I have a good team because Mayor Pro Tem's still on it and Alderman Grant's still on it, so I've got plenty of people to lean on. The manager's report you've heard from our meeting, the BA4 report you've heard, do have an action item, the county styrofoam ban. Mayor Pro Tem Benson led a discussion at our last meeting to take the action by the Board of Aldermen and there was a consensus of opinion to move forward in an effort to have Onslow County adopt an ordinance to ban unencapsulated polystyrene in dock floats, which is what we've done. And so the action item would be for the Board of Aldermen should request that the Onslow County Commissioners adopt an ordinance to ban the use of unencapsulated polystyrene in dock floats in county waters. So we're asking, yeah, we well, I mean, if it could just be done by consent, I mean,
Well, if it's a formal statement of the town, then I would recommend a resolution, which would entail a motion and a vote.
Well, they're asking us to ask Onslow County to do something.
Yeah, we've already banned it. What we're asking is that you approach Onslow County for them to ban it in their waters.
Then, if you just like want to direct staff, are you talking about staff make that inquiry? If there's a consensus that staff, yeah, okay.
It should either be the town manager or the mayor would make a recommendation to the county to adopt the ban, as the town has already done. It's just something that we should have done back in July when the town adopted the ban, and there's been no follow-through on it, so it came through the BISAC committee to get followed through and to get action on this item. It's a really pretty simple thing.
Okay, do we have consensus from the board? Anyone have concerns?
Just a clarification, would you like the request to come from a letter with the mayor's signature or the town manager? Is there a consensus on that?
I'm fine doing it, or Alice?
Yeah, I would recommend the mayor since
Yeah, that's
it's a
fine.
consensus of the board.
Whoever's got the most clout.
One of the things we could do, Mayor, too, I'll be attending their next board meeting. If you want me to present that to them. Or
When is
send
their
it in,
next meeting?
In less than 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't think that will be hard to come up with a letter.
No, I'm just thinking
Yeah.
then I can talk to them about it, so it won't be a problem.
We're continuing, just one more real thing to talk about. We're continuing to talk about the new draft outline for the engineered beach and inlet management plan. And so we had a good session this past meeting where Alderman Grant made a presentation to talk about the financial plan and trying to come up with how we can get monies together, notwithstanding any potential grants that we might could get for the next 5 to 10 years. And so there was a lot of good discussion was had by that, and Chris Gibson, TI Coastal, made a presentation in talking about the draft plan that they're trying to put together to present to you guys. And in that, he's got a good idea for the short-term plan of what we need to do and what the benefits are going to be that I think is going to be approved by the BISAC and probably sent forward to you guys. But in trying to put together what we're calling a 30-year plan, we're having some internal discussion and we're throwing out ideas about what we want to see over the next 15 to 30 years, what we foresee for Topsail Island. And there's a lot of things being discussed. I mean, I could stand up here for an hour probably to tell you all the things that's being discussed. But I do think that that's going to be coming together shortly so that he can present you with a draft outline of what the plan is going to be before trying to get that done before the budget, I think, That's what we're trying to do. So that's, putting a lot of hard work in, and there's some midnight oil being burnt by the committee, and so thank y'all for supporting us, and if you have any questions for me, feel free to ask.
Yes, sir.
Just one clarification, and just to refresh the board's memory. The idea is Chris is putting together something, okay, an overall plan that will come to us.
Right.
And then what the BISAC committee will be doing is brainstorming around that draft outline, which I think was what happened with Topsail. He told us
Correct.
about that. So that if he comes up with 3 options, BISAC may say, can you consider another 2? But then that would come back to this board to approve any beach plan. Fair?
Correct.
Tom, did you have, Alderman Leonard, did you have something? Okay.
Good.
Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank y'all very much.
The next item is Alderman Leonard with the update from our Washington DC trip that we all survived.
We've survived. Ricky, can you put my slides up, please? Okay, I'm going to go through the trip real quick. First of all, the players on the trip from the town were the mayor, the manager, and myself. We're up there March 20 to 24. First and last days were travel days, which were adventures in and of themselves, if you ask the manager. Okay, so second slide, please. I'm going to go through day by day. I think it's important for what we did. First day, we had an in-brief with the Ferguson Group, which is a consulting firm that we're part of with TISPC. We had a working lunch with them, went through basically who was going to talk about what and when, and, you know, each of the topics and each of the people we met with, who was most, you know, what the meetings focused on. And largely, I'd say probably 75% of the meetings focused on North Topsail Beach and Cobra. The first day we met with a gentleman up there, Mr. Ryan Hamilton, Staff Director for House Subcommittee on Water Resources and Environment. And these are the folks that actually, when a bill is referred to a subcommittee, they're the ones that actually do the work and do the research and make recommendations to the subcommittees. Interestingly, a couple of years ago, or 4 years ago, 2018, when then manager Chadwick and I went up, we didn't get really far with the individual in this particular job, because it had to do with the makeup of the Congress at the time and who the majority was. And now that we have a Republican majority, things are moving a little differently. Next slide, please. Wednesday was a big day. Senator Budd, his staff, Senator Tillis' key staff, Congressman Rouser, and then the Army Corps of Engineers. Tillis could not meet with us personally. He was in a subcommittee meeting. When we met with the 2 Senate staffs, they suggested that Congress take the lead on a Cobra mapping change bill due to the political makeup of each chamber. We were well received by everyone. I thought they all understood our issue. They all were very supportive of what we were trying to do with getting our Cobra mapping changed. Next slide, please. The first person we met with, again, was the subcommittee staff director. Again, he asked basically what we needed from him, and he was very supportive of what we're trying to do. And again, these are the folks that once a bill is dropped, they're the ones that are going to do the staff work before it goes to a subcommittee hearing. We finally met, and we saved the best for last. Congressman Murphy and Ray Celeste, who's his legislative assistant and also a retired Marine colonel and a friend of mine. And Congressman Murphy started out his comments by apologizing to the town on behalf of the federal government for how we've been dragged through the mud with this Cobra change. It was a really enlightening meeting. He turned to Ray and he said, okay, enough, let's get moving on submitting a bill. Next slide. So, a week later, to the day, Congressman Murphy filed the bill amending our Cobra maps. It happened last Thursday, and it was co-sponsored by Congressman Rouser, and it has already been referred to the House Committee on Natural Resources, which is its first stop. And it's got to get through there to keep going and to get finally either to somewhere on the floor where it gets discussed, or hopefully maybe attached to, as a rider to another bill, and silently goes through the process for approval. I'll caution everyone, this is good news, but at the same time, we've been this far before. And so brings us to the next slide, which is a bill, which I know you can't read, but all these slides I'm hoping will become part of the package and for the minutes, and it'll be in there. Next is a press release that Murphy and Rouser put out last Friday. It's the staff director for communications for Congressman Murphy called me, wanted to know who I thought it should go to in terms of local press. I said the Wilmington Star News and Port City Daily. Jacksonville Daily News is neither daily nor news these days. Okay, next please. Links to those two slides that you can really read are right there. Next slide. Okay, so what's next? We need to pass a resolution thanking Congressman Murphy and Rouser for filing the bill, which I know is in the packet. I've asked for, and it has been set up in such a way that all the elected officials and the manager sign that. I think it's important that we all have our names on it, and especially the manager, because she's going to be one carrying the torch on this after I'm long gone. And now that she's been up here, up in Washington and sat down with these individuals, they know who she is. What else we need to do is just continue the discussions with Murphy's office, and I've done that to include on my write-up from home today, talking to Ray Celeste, and continue discussions with the Ferguson group, and specifically with former Congressman McIntyre. I spoke with him last Friday. He thinks the next thing we need to do is, now that the bill has been filed in Congress, to sort of gently pressure our senators to file a companion bill on their side, understanding that since there's not a Republican majority, it will probably not go far, but at least to do that. Okay? Next slide. So how can our citizens help? Write to our congressman, thank them for what they've done. Write to members of the House Committee on Natural Resources. Okay? There are no members from North Carolina on that House committee, but we have a lot of out-of-state property owners. Next slide, please. There they are, okay? And I mean, they've got people on that committee who are from representatives from Puerto Rico, American Samoa, Guam, all over the place. There are none from North Carolina, but we have a lot of absentee property owners who vote in other states. And if their representatives are listed here, it would be great if they could go ahead and write to their representatives and ask them to please support House Bill 2437. Next slide. I've never seen this in a hotel lobby. I thought it was worthy of including here. That's a horse with a lamp on its head. It was in the lobby of our hotel. Subject to your questions.
He only stays in the best places.
That's right. Subject to your questions, that concludes my presentation.
So, Tom, I just have one question. In previous years, we had drafted a COBRA letter that residents could pull off of our website and modify if they wanted.
We should do it again.
Yeah,
Yes,
would
ma'am.
you mind taking the charge on?
Got it.
Okay.
Got it. The one last thing I'll say was that our manager really earned her pay last week, or 2 weeks ago. Did a great job for us. And another person who I need to mention in terms of his, he was there when something needed to be said that none of the others in the room said, was Chris Gibson. And he knocked it out of the park for the town too. He really did. That's all I have.
Okay,
He was in a wheelchair, right?
yes.
Yes, he was.
All right, so then we've removed the bike lanes, and what we did add was the meeting minutes.
Before we move on,
Sure.
it sounds like it was one of the best trips to Washington ever, but don't we need a motion to approve those letters for
Those resolutions?
Murphy and Rouser?
They're in the, well, they're in our packet.
Were they a consent agenda item or not?
No, they weren't in the consent agenda.
Let's do it this way. I'll make the motion that we approve the resolutions that have been presented to the board, thanking Congressman Rouser and Congressman Murphy for their assistance with the House bill that was just recently filed.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so then the next item is the meeting minutes, Mike, and what I would like to ask you to do, if you could just focus on the context, because if there's any grammatical errors, you can follow up with Nancy afterwards, and Alice.
Okay, for the minutes, page 34 in your packet, the last bullet item under the coastal engineer report, the context should say, at County Beach Access 4, at County Beach Access 4. We did get rid of sand fencing on the seaward side, which is not good for turtles. The last bullet on that list of bullets. Otherwise, it's
34,
out
I
of
think.
context for anybody reading it, and they'll say no.
Oh, that it's just beach access 4.
At County Beach Access 4, we did. That's the change. And then down on page 39, instead of Topsail Island Shoreline Protection Commission, it's got an R instead of a T. Those are my corrections to the minute.
Okay. You reject his comments, okay. Then we're gonna move on to new business. Yes, sir?
So we have to approve them.
Approve those minutes.
We need a motion to approve them.
Does anybody want to make a motion to approve the amended? Do
did.
I'll make a motion to approve the amended minutes.
we have a second?
Second,
All in favor?
discussion, discussion.
Yes, sir.
Trying to say this politely. We got this package on the 29th of March. And I think that it would be nice if there are changes that need to be made to the minutes, that rather than doing them at the meeting, they get submitted to the clerk ahead of time, so the clerk can amend the minutes prior to the meeting.
Well, normally the minutes come out as a separate draft ahead of that packet, so we can do it at that time, but as far as I was aware, that didn't happen this month.
Okay, well, it's just something we can look to make sure we streamline in the future. Okay,
Still need a vote.
we have a motion, we have a second, we had discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Under new business, this is Alderman Grant's topic, the impact of the increase in Sneeds Ferry housing on North Topsail Beach public safety.
Just real briefly, and I know that, that Alice and the public safety people have already met on this. I think everybody basically is aware there's an awful lot of new construction going on. And I would imagine, and from talking to Alice, that this could have an impact in terms of our services and things, because I know we do go off island to help people, and we've got, a cooperation agreement with the county, right? So I just think that it's something we
We
ought
go
to.
if we are requested to.
Right. My whole point is, we've talked about this as a board before, that it's something that I think we're all aware of. There's so much new construction going on around that as long as the public safety people and Alice are happy with it, that's fine, but I just thought it's something we have at least put on the agenda as a comment, so. That's all I had. I didn't have anything specific, it just hit me from talking to the sheriff, to Chris at the county meetings, that they're understaffed. They don't have enough sheriffs. They're pulling people off the road because by law they have to staff the prisons first. And so they're way understaffed right now. And so I think that's gonna be an issue. So-
And I would just say that with the new sheriff that's been in place, he's having quarterly meetings with local police chiefs, including ours. So if there's anything that needs to be discussed, he will bring that back to me, and it'll be presented at the board for any recommendations going forward.
I got a comment.
Yes, sir.
There was an article in the newspaper, the Daily News, on Saturday about this very issue. They interviewed 3 folks from Sneeds Ferry. You know, the issue that we're going to see with especially all these apartments out here on the 210 corridor is all these developments advertise themselves as just minutes to the beach. the beach that they're just minutes to is North Topsail Beach. And so it's going to potentially put a drain on all of our resources in all of our departments, everything from the police and fire, EMS, water rescue, even how often we've got to pump the portable toilets at the beach accesses. So it's public works, it's everything. And I don't think it's fair or just to put these increases on the backs of our taxpayers, because eventually it's going to cost the town more money to continue to provide the level of services after all these apartments are full of people out here. And we probably need to be thinking about how we're going to approach who and when and why. And, do we want to think about, resolutions to the county commissioners, state legislators, and our state senator regarding the type of development and the speed with which this unincorporated portion of the county just across the bridge is being developed. That's my thoughts.
Any additional conversation?
I think it's just something we need to be aware of. I wasn't asking for any kind of motions or anything else today. I think every time you drive out of here, you see the construction. So just to make sure everybody, we give it some thought down the road.
I think my fellow aldermen bring up some very good points. As all counties are struggling right now with their budgets. However, as they have more property being built up, more property taxes coming in, and yet some of this burden will fall onto us. I am in total agreement that we may need to really have them look at this and maybe even help provide us with some more funding in the future.
Well, I will say too, what I read online was, I believe it was Onslow County's planning department. They had 3 or 4 open houses at the library. And I don't know if there's any remaining open houses, but I think that we should start by start by asking them, what is their plan? What is their plan to support all of these folks that are moving in?
So they had these same kind of meetings a few years back, and I attended every single one of them, and actually was writing for the newspaper at the time. These planning sessions are really interesting, but it's nothing concrete. This would be a good area to put in extra sidewalks, or this would be a good area to put in a boardwalk or green spaces, but it's just ideas.
Okay.
But you're right, that would be, a good thing for us to attend and say, well, what services do you expect to come from us?
How are you supporting your growth?
Right, and I'm sure that I speak for the board, I have no problem with mutual aid over the bridge. I mean, heaven forbid that there is tragedies over there. Of course, our resources are available and our first responders are right there. We have top-notch people, and we don't begrudge that at all. But there is a cost associated with it.
And to be honest, the one that I know from the police side, they're already talking to the sheriff and stuff. My biggest concern over there, and again, I don't live over there, is they have volunteer fire departments over there. And I'm not sure how that's going to play out with the kind of stuff that's going in over there. And I know from attending the county meetings, this goes back with the fire tax and everything else, they were having a hard time coming up with the funding for all these volunteer fire departments, and more importantly, getting people to volunteer to be in these fire departments. And so I'm not sure how an unincorporated area is ever going to get the resources necessary to handle that stuff. So,
Well, along that line, and having lived here over 20 years now, the biggest issue is every so often out in Sneads Ferry, the subject of incorporation rears its ugly head. And the fact is that they probably should have incorporated Sneads Ferry 10, 15 years ago at the latest. People are against it for various reasons, the biggest one being they're going to have to pay taxes to a municipality. The other one is just some of the locals that date back generations, they just don't like the change and see that as a function of the change. But long story short, you're right, Rick, and especially with the fire departments. And I know our police and fire both respond across that bridge, especially our police. And, you know, somebody in North Shore needs a cop, and they need a cop right this minute. They're gonna get one that probably has a sign, has North Topsail Beach written on the side of the car. And, you know, something's gotta give here at some point, because, and I know it's not gonna give in this meeting, and I know Joanne's looking at her watch, but, and she should. But, you know, this is a good discussion to have, and it's a good discussion to continue with the county, particularly, you know, from a we're all in this together perspective, not as an adversarial, you know, we're getting the short end of the stick here across the bridge, you know, and the one guy that wrote a couple of comments or was quoted with a couple of things, one was about how all it would take is, you know, North Topsail to change the legislation and we would annex the 210 corridor. And, you know, I've been around this town again almost, you know, over 20 years. Nobody's ever talked about it. Nobody's ever talked about it, and it's not an issue. And we all know that there was legislation that was put in place to prevent that when the town was incorporated. And you know, that's the first thing that would have to happen, is that would have to be changed, modified, rescinded, and then we'd have to get everyone in the affected area to agree to it with a yes vote, and it would take one person to vote no. And with that, I'm done.
Okay, we're gonna move on. Because I'm sure on Facebook later, I'm gonna see how Alderman Leonard would like North Topsail Beach to annex over the bridge.
Actually, Alderman Leonard already made a comment on one of the Facebook pages about why it can't happen, so we're good there.
Okay.
Hold on one second. Alderman Plettel also made a comment on the Daily News article that why it couldn't happen also. Done.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Okay, this is also Alderman Grant, the next item.
This is very brief, and it's a follow-up to what Larry talked about. One of the things that we found in BISAC, and it started with a handout that I gave that this board put together, that was the financial analysis of where the money's been spent in the town over the last couple of years. And as Larry said, it was a surprise to a number of close relatives of his, because the wisdom out there was that all the money had been spent up in 1, not in 5. And remember the chart that we put down. And so one of the things that we're doing, and I've got it here's a beach engineer, but it's even briefer than that, is what we'd like to do is BISAC is, and Mike suggested this, we're going to put together kind of a fact sheet for this board in terms of what things are out there, like how do you handle this, COBRA, all that kind of stuff, so that when you get a beach plan to this board, we can get rid of some of the urban legends, so that the first impression that people have isn't, well, I didn't think we could do that. All right, so it's more of an educational thing that we're going to be doing as a committee with Chris Gibson, but basically it's just to get rid of that stuff. So again, when it comes to us, all right, because I'm learning things that I didn't know. There's things that I thought we could do and didn't do, and there's all these urban legends out there. And so I think Mike had a great suggestion, which is we'll put together things and educate the board over time. That was the whole point of this thing. It was not to get into a long discussion, but to start an educational process, because I think one of the things we're following, and I think Larry will nod his head, is there's a whole lot of things we thought were true, Larry, that are not true, right?
Okay.
That was the whole point of that.
Quick comment, I've got something for you. It's one of the things that we got done through the TISPC. It's a real short paper on the evidence of a full complement of infrastructure in the Cobra areas and why we should have never been there. And it's what we handed out up in Washington. And it's a real good summary of how we got where we got and why we shouldn't be there in the first place.
Right, I mean, that's excellent. I mean, and the example that we've looked at is we were told no money can go into a Cobra zone, and yet we've got $10.5 million that's going into phase 4. Okay, so.
So, but back to that point, that paper should be on our website.
It should be.
So if you could please.
That would be awesome. Yeah.
Sorry,
Thank you.
Brian.
That's all I had.
That was a nice summary, and I think for folks wondering, I think that would be good to have on our page. Okay. The next item is C, which is Ms. Darian, the Eco Topsail via Topsail Island Shoreline Protection Committee request to consider proposed ordinance to ban release of balloons in the Topsail Island area.
Thank you. At the last Shoreline Protection Commission meeting, Eco Topsail did a presentation where they're posing to each of the towns to come forward with an ordinance to ban the release of balloons in the Topsail Island area. I included in the packet a copy of that proposed ordinance and a little bit of information. I just want to say this is just for your information. As of today's meeting, I'm not looking or recommending any action to be taken at this point, just to put this on your radar and to let you know that other towns are also discussing this. If the board does choose to move forward, we of course would want to make sure that we go forward with an ordinance that is comparable with the other towns, so we're consistent, so it's not confusing. And the other issue, staff has briefly, we briefly talked about this, and one thing that I do want to bring to your attention is that the violation that they had proposed is guilty of non-criminal infraction punishable by a fine in the sum of $500 per balloon, which in our opinion is somewhat excessive. There's also the issue of enforcement as well.
This is just my personal opinion, but I don't even think I could count on one hand the people I've seen with balloons on the beach. Kites, yeah, but not balloons, and I don't know how we would enforce this.
We have had some releases when, usually in memoriam of somebody passing and stuff. I do agree on how we'd enforce it, because it's not anything that you generally, unless they've announced it, it's hard to know that even something's going on. I do hate the environmental impact of released balloons, and I do think we should go forward on seeing if we could do some sort of ordinance or something, but I do agree with the mayor that it would be cumbersome to try to do.
And that's the problem I have with a majority of our ordinances. I think we create them as, not just this board, but all boards. We end up with a stack that's, 3 inches deep, and then we have trouble enforcing them. So I don't have an issue with a statement that says, we discourage people to release balloons, but I personally am not in favor of an ordinance, because
Well, 2 comments. When we have found the balloons, they've been like that. There's no air in them, and they're laying in the grass. We pick them up and throw them away. And the second issue I've got with this is, what does release mean? If it gets away from me, is that a release? I'm out there with my kid for his birthday. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, sometimes you just have to say we discourage stuff like this, but the reality is asking our people to enforce somebody releasing a balloon just doesn't sound like a good use of resources.
no, and it sounds to me like we're using ordinance instead of education. So maybe what we should be doing
How about a
is
policy
education.
statement?
Maybe, or maybe something, Connie, it would be something that maybe the Turtle Hospital could work into their turtle talks.
That will happen.
Thank you. So I
We're
think,
not
Ms.
gonna
Darian,
save
if
the
you could
world.
let them know that, we appreciate the importance of the issues that it causes, but I think I'm speaking for the board that North Topsail would prefer to try and put an educational spin on this versus an ordinance that our police officers are then arresting little kids with balloons.
I like the policy statement as well.
I think so too.
It's less government overreach.
Yeah, it's crazy. Okay. Sorry.
Bigger fish to fry.
Thank you.
No, you're wrong.
Now, the next item is also Ms. Darian, and it's the presentation by W.K. Dixon and grant funding. That's what I wrote down.
Thank you, Mark, for patiently waiting for us to get to this point. We appreciate you being here.
It's only a 2-hour-long presentation.
Did you bring
I move we
lunch?
move that to next week.
I will set the stage and say I do not have a picture of a horse with a lamp on its head, so I'm sorry about that. I've been working with the town manager well, I guess this presentation is going to be kind of 2 parts. One, it's a summary of the same presentation we provided to the Topsail Island Shoreline Protection Commission to review the ROCCP Phase 3 results. And the focus specifically on the North Topsail Island flooding sites. And then second, we're going to talk about some potential funding opportunities, especially one that's coming up immediately that would need to pass a resolution to proceed forward on.
And just before you get into the heart of your presentation, just to give some background information, I think that would be maybe helpful for everyone, and particularly that's viewing. The three towns received an RCCP grant in the amount of $135,000 that was filed jointly by North Topsail Beach, Surf City, and Topsail Island. The RCCP, which is the North Carolina Resilient Coastal Communities Program, for those of you trying to figure out what the letters stand for. They provided a phased framework to assess coastal risks, vulnerabilities, and then engage community stakeholders and develop projects to strategically improve the resiliency of communities and their natural built infrastructure. So that was the point of the program in general that the state rolled out. Through this process, 10 sites, or hotspots as we called them, for North Topsail Beach were identified. And W.K. Dixon, of course, presented those at the last Shoreline Protection Commission meeting on February 24th, along with the other towns' projects. So following that meeting, I had asked W.K. Dixon to provide a proposal for grant writing services for two of the projects presented, the park and the fire station area, and a probable cost of construction, so that the board can consider those sites and those options. I'm going to let Mark go ahead and go through the presentation. Then if I need to give more information as far as the grants that have been identified, then I'll jump in at that point.
An excellent summary, so hopefully I'm not repeating some of the stuff you said. But next slide. So again, we just went over the background of what we looked at for the potential flooding sites. I think everybody can look at this picture and kind of say, yeah, that looks familiar. To set the context for some of these solutions to these flooding sites that we talked about, just a little bit of background, I'll talk about this a little bit more. We set up these solutions to utilize nature-based designs, so really promoting infiltration-based practices and approaches. And really kind of designing them so they infiltrate as much runoff as possible from the roadside infiltration. So as I'm going through this and talking about these sites, we're not solving hurricane flooding events in these solutions. That's not the intent, not the goal, but rather the goal to, when you have a summer thunderstorm that drops about 2 inches of water an hour, or what we call the 2-year storm event, really our intent is getting the water off the road to provide safe travel during storm events, and not hurricane events, but regular occurring storm events. And also trying to keep these designs within the public right-of-way. So none of our proposed solutions are building stuff within public property. We would have to acquire easements and that kind of aspects. So a lot of these proposed solutions are also on NCDOT roads, so if we were to move forward with several of them, we would have to have coordination with NCDOT. So I just want to provide that context as we're talking about these proposed solutions. And again, just the objectives of the RCCP Phase 3 grant was to provide solutions that had the nature-based aspects of it, improved environmental quality, provide economic prosperity through safe travel, protecting public health and safety, and again, encouraging infiltration to mitigate flooding. As was mentioned, the 3 towns that helped out with the grant or was involved with the grant, North Topsail Beach, Surf City, and Topsail Beach. There were 10 sites for North Topsail Beach that we analyzed. I'm showing this overall map, so how we label North Topsail Beach sites, they're actually like in the middle of all of the 18 sites. So you go to the next slide, you'll see it's not like site 1, site 2, site 3. Really, we collected all 18, and North Topsail Beach site started with site 4 and went our way that way. So as we're walking through the different potential solutions, I just wanted to touch on the type of infiltration infrastructure that I'll be mentioning as part of these solutions, in case you're just not familiar. So we used infiltration swales. Those are riprap line swales with sandy material in the bottom of them. So as water flows through the swale, it infiltrates down. A bioswale is you swap out the riprap for native vegetation, and you put under drains under that swale, and that really helps promote as the water flows through the swale, it's infiltrating down, and the plants are uptaking a lot of the pollutants and nutrients. You know, as an engineer, I got to give fancy names for these type of very similar to French drain. Yeah, so you could think of the infiltration swale as a very large French drain. So again, with infiltration in mind, we also proposed in several site locations using infiltration chambers. One of the things we're implementing up and down the coast are dune infiltration systems. So utilizing infiltration chambers within your secondary dune systems to help either from gravity move water or pump water to a site. And dunes are made of, as we all know, sand, which can infiltrate a lot of water. So let's utilize that natural resource. Here's a quick animation, again, just from a dune infiltration system. You should be able to click on it, and water, of course, will fill up in the road, flood the road. In some cases, you can put a pump system. It'll pump water off the road into a dune infiltration system or infiltration system that is set high above the seasonal high water table. Of course, you want to set it above seasonal high water table so you get that infiltration potential happening. I'm staying high level in this presentation, but if you want to dive into the math of it all, I have a bunch of slides at the end of this presentation. We could really dive into the engineering for those who are interested, but I'm just going to keep it high level. Dune infiltration systems have been successfully installed in North Carolina. We're in the process of working with Surf City to install some. This is a picture of one we installed in Caswell Beach, and work with Oak Island to install several as well. Another really useful infiltration tool is the use of permeable pavers. On your left, you're looking at permeable pavers that have been installed in Nag's Head. So if you go up to Nag's Head to a lot of the beach accesses, they do have permeable pavers installed as an effort to help address surface runoff. And I should have flipped them, but one of the funding applications we talked about, you can go to the next slide here, is the use of the ARPA LASSI funding. And so just a context here, the state has utilized some ARPA funding that was granted for the use of stormwater projects, where they've called it the Local Assistance for Stormwater Infrastructure Investment Program, the LASSI funding. For those who qualify for this funding, they have to have a couple of three key considerations. First, you have to document stormwater quantity or quality issues. So luckily in the case of North Topsail Beach, we have documented from the RCCP grant issues both from quantity and how we can help address some of the quality aspects. You have to demonstration of significant hardship raising the revenue. So the LASSI grants that are being put forth, not everybody is eligible for them. I'll go into details on that in the next couple of slides. And then you have to have a council or board resolution that is that's to be approved. So from a funding opportunity perspective, and this is the spring 2023 round, $6.3 million has been set aside for the state to be allocated for stormwater planning applications. So when I say planning, what falls under that category is a stormwater study, all the way up to design plans going up to bidding. Last year, they did have funding applications for construction, but unfortunately, just due to the need of it, all that money got spent back in the fall, this past fall. For the Lassie funds, no matching funds are required. However, the funding applications are due by May 1st, 2023, which is, I believe, 3 weeks away now. So, just to touch on, and I had to do a little bit of research to confirm, so again, not everybody is eligible for this funding. This funding was set up for, as the documents indicate, for if you had the economic hardship in raising the stormwater funds. So the state had 5 economic indicators that if a town or community had one economic indicator that was less than the 5, they qualify. So believe it or not, a lot of beach towns did not qualify for these. I can tell you, like Oak Island did not qualify because they actually had higher than the state benchmark. This also allows towns for, bigger towns. Raleigh and Charlotte do not qualify for these. So we had to reach out to the state. If you click on the next one, and then click on the next one too. So per what this information the state provided us. Now I'm not an accountant, so I'm not going to I don't know what the budget said, what y'all's budget says, or this is the information the state provided me, and that we'll put in the application. North Topsail Beach does have 2 economic indicators that are less than the state benchmark. So if you find data that is contrary to this, and then you're above the state benchmark, don't let me know, because this is what the state told me. We'll use what the state says. So the good news is North Topsail Beach does qualify for this funding. Next slide. So I'm going to go through the hotspot solutions that we identified in that ROCCP. As Alice mentioned, we go into detail on 2 of the sites. But again, I just wanted to talk about that Lassie funding. And one other important consideration with that Lassie funding, I should have put on the slide, is that you can apply for up to $400,000 for that planning component. When you do the funding application, you have to justify why you're asking for $100,000, $200,000, or $400,000, and have that, believe it or not, I have to put my engineering seal on a budget cost that says this is why we're asking for that money. But you have the option to go up to $400,000 for the request.
And that's just for the planning part, not the construction.
Correct. Yeah, that is correct. That $400,000 is just for the planning part of it. There is no more money left for the construction. So, on that last round, I'll also mention that 85% of all the planning grants got accepted to what people applied for.
I'm sorry, planning and permitting, or just if we're applying for something?
Yeah, good point.
Get something turnkey.
Yes, that's an excellent question. Is it both planning and permitting? And the answer is yes. That money can be applied for both planning, making construction documents, and applying for the permitting, such as applying for a CAMA minor permit or whatnot. So, those, I said about 85% of those grants on that last cycle did get accepted. Those grants that did not get accepted was because there was something wrong with the resolution that was passed, or a resolution was not provided. So that resolution is key to a successful application. So, before I move on to the hotspots, any questions about that Lassie funding? I could spend 2 hours talking about it, but I don't want to. Somebody's looking at their watch, so I don't want to. So several of the. So I'm just going to hit. There's a lot of hotspots, and we'll talk about the high level solutions. So for hotspot 4, and that is at the existing fire station. That's taking water off the road and utilizing what we call that infiltration chambers. And unfortunately, in this case, the way the elevations are set out, we would have to have the water flow to one spot and pump that water to an infiltration chambers. But we were able to design the width and length and size of the infiltration chambers to capture the majority of the water that would pond in that intersection. Hotspot 5, and that's between the 17th Avenue and 18th Avenue, was looking at how can we utilize the existing shoulder of the road and put in those infiltration swales that we showed pictures of. I think on the next slide, you can see kind of pictures of this. So hotspot 4, that's the area we would go in and put infiltration chambers, put vegetation back on the top of it. Hotspot 5, putting infiltration swales right off to the road. Really, right now it looks pretty flat. We could put in those swales to help capture that water coming off the road. I think I need better glasses here. Hotspot 6 is putting in again, more infiltration swales, kind of utilizing that aspect of can we use the existing right-of-way and dig down in swales and pour that water off the road. Hotspot 7 is near the New River Inlet Road beach access. There's some low spots along that curve. What we were proposing is putting in inlets to pour that water off the road and putting it in infiltration chambers, doing infiltration chambers near that beach access. Again, some pictures showing how could we, hotspot 6, put in infiltration swales, hotspot 7, location of infiltration chambers. And I believe everybody has printouts of these figures, so I'm going to, again, stay high level. Hotspots 8 is the park, where we're talking about excavating out the swales next to the road and implementing permeable pavers to help address surface runoff. Hotspot 9 is, again, putting in infiltration swales and bioswales within the limited right-of-way. So I'm going to talk in detail about hotspot 8 later. And hotspot 9 is a picture where we would want putting in the potential bioswale. Again, that's the DOT right-of-way, so that require coordination with the DOT.
Can I ask a quick question? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
That's fine.
you mentioned no property right-of-way or additional property would have to be purchased. How do you handle going across driveways?
The driveways are within the right-of-way.
But I mean, you just would go under and do like a pipe or just a...
Put a pipe under the driveway.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So in that case, because it's in the right of way, we could, and we'd have to work with the homeowner maintaining access to the home while we would put in a driveway culvert. So. Okay, I was talking about, hotspot 10. That's also a shallow swale, and again, connecting with the cross drain on the road. Hotspot 11 is incorporating permeable pavers, taking water off the road, and putting infiltration chambers on the bottom and putting permeable pavers on the top. And that's, again, utilizing a beach access for that. Next slide. Hotspot 12, again, North Topsail had a lot of hotspots that we looked at. Is implementing bioswales within the right-of-way. And I think in a case like this is pitting in, we do have a road access where we would have to not disturb that road access, but also connecting them through a pipe system. And then hotspot 13, that's way in the north part of the island, but looking at pitting a shallow swale with riprap to pull water off the road. When water ponds on that intersection, there's really no good way for water to get off the road unless it flows further down the road and into that private pond. So, and I would say with hotspot 13, that would definitely require coordination with NCDOT. I know we're talking about potential bike lane going in at that location, so perhaps that could be an opportunity for collaboration. Next slide. So the two sites that we wanted to look in further and kind of explore in further details and potentially maybe use for this, apply for this LASSI funding. The first one is at the fire station site, the hotspot number 4. And that is taking a pipe system off of the main road and taking it down that side road where the fire station is located off of. So the top picture, the top right-hand picture on that intersection is we would put in inlets along the side of the road, pour that water off, and then run it down the road. If you want to go to the next slide, go down to the end of the road and utilize that existing, I guess we called it a paper street. Paper street, yeah. And put in a series of infiltration chambers. Like I mentioned, unfortunately, just due to the elevation and topography, and also to maintain that separation between the seasonal high water table, that particular system would have to have a pump. So you take all the water and then pump it up and discharge into the infiltration chambers. To note, we're doing that. One of our projects with Surf City is we're doing that right now. Is putting in a system where we have to pump water into the infiltration chambers. Next slide. So that was we were asked to put together estimated construction cost, and I guess legally I should say this is what do we call it? Engineer's opinion of probable estimated construction cost, where I'm trying to look into the future and estimate the economy and what stuff's going to cost 6 months to 1 year from now. These costs are from the bid values that we've collected in the past 6 months, which everybody in here knows that the past 6 months construction values have been pretty high. Maybe with rising interest rates or other, in the future, maybe construction costs will go down. But for now, the estimated construction cost with the 20% contingency is in the range of $670,000, plus or minus. For the park, as everybody's aware, one of the main reasons that water ponds in the road is those swales between the parking lots and the main road. Well, I wouldn't really even call them swales. They're filled in and don't really drain. So we would make them infiltration swales and then have cross-connection pipes where it could drain around the park and via a level spreader discharge out behind the park. In addition, we would put in we would suggest putting in permeable pavers, both to capture the surface runoff from the parking lots and also provide as an educational opportunity, for what the town is doing to help implement green infrastructure and infiltration-based devices. So we put together a set of plans for those. The elevations work out. Right? This is constructible. So, and the estimated construction cost for this, again, looking at the crystal ball of what things should cost and have been costing, is around $337,000 or $338,000.
I do have a question about the permeable pavers.
Sure.
Because everything I hear about permeable pavers and also permeable concrete is that it really is only a matter of time until it does get clogged.
If you don't maintain it.
If you don't maintain it.
Yes.
And how do you maintain it?
Absolutely cleaning it. So you can have some communities choose they have a vacuum truck on site. They can have a contractor to come in and use a vacuum truck. Others take a blower and blow it off. I would recommend, if you have the opportunity, to talk to town of Nags Head. They've implemented a lot of permeable paver systems on the beach access right next to the primary dune system, and those have worked quite well. So David Ryan at Nags Head is he's a fan of them.
Yeah.
So
we could maintain those with the equipment that we have right now. I will say that they did propose one solution initially that was permeable pavers for a roadway, which up on the north end, which of course we thought was not feasible. But for parking spaces, I think that's a lot more a lot more pragmatic and easier to maintain and just makes more sense of a solution.
No, yeah, that's fine. As long as it sounds like you guys have already thought through the maintenance, that would have been my only concern. Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
the issue on the pumps, the same thing. I mean, it's sand. So we have the ability, I guess, to maintain those too. I mean, that would be my concern about anytime you're pumping sand, you're gonna have an issue with the pumps.
I will say this, any infrastructure you put in, especially at the coast, will require a maintenance plan. Now, there are coastal communities that pump stormwater and maintain the systems. Again, I work a lot with Oak Island, so feel free to give them a call. They use pumps all the time. Other communities, Charleston is another example of you turn the corner and here's another pump. Now, they're slightly different as far as their topography goes, but it has been done, and there are maintenance plans associated with that. But yes, you're absolutely right. It does require maintenance.
So Mark, I have a question. Can you go back one slide, Ricky?
Sure.
At this site, you got all the swales on the town park side of the road, but you ignored the county side of the road, and a significant amount of the water coming into that area comes from that county gravel parking lot when it rains. And you didn't include any swales on the county side to account for the water coming off of the county parking lot, because that sand in the county parking lot, when it rains 1 to 2 inches an hour, is not infiltrating that rainfall rate.
I think Deb's got a comment. I think I
Who
might
got
can
the
answer
engineering
that.
answer?
Sure.
Because the focus was on the town park and protecting the town park, that I don't know as we even considered or thought about the county property, as we didn't have control over it. And so the focus was.
But it's the DOT right-of-way. And on the town side of the park, it's the DOT right-of-way. It's not the town's right-of-way, is my understanding. We just got a check in the mail, according to finance report, that we're being paid to mow the DOT right-of-way in town along this road in Island Drive. So I don't understand that argument at all.
So the next steps, if we were to implement this project, would be we'd have to have coordination with DOT. Right, have to have an NCDOT encroachment permit, and
That's for any of the work that we have proposed within the NCDOT, right?
Absolutely, yes. Yep. The next step for this one and other projects would be, and I definitely suggest coordination with the DOT for any ways they can help support these projects. Sometimes when we're talking about getting water off the road, they will step in and help how they can, but I can't speak for NCDOT. And to your point, if we can coordinate with DOT and not impact any existing utilities on that side of the road, so I don't know how well.
But back to Deb's point, Deb,
I
all
don't
the
know how well-
all the swales are on the town side.
That's
There's-
what we were just saying.
Right, there's no swales on the beach side. So if you're looking at where it's gonna be, right? That's,
So one of the other things we had to think about in our design was not impacting existing utilities. If you look on, and I don't know how well you can see it on here, there is a force main at, I'm going to point it out, not this. This line right here says FM, that's the force main running along this side. So we did not intentionally do
Wanna
any
relocate.
excavation on top of the force main, just trying to keep costs down. Now, we could relocate the force main, but if cost is concerned, I wouldn't recommend that.
I had I guess, I don't know if it's a question or a comment. When we were talking to DOT about the bike lanes, they were proposing to do it during the
you might
resurfacing.
not know what you're talking about.
Okay, we were talking about putting in bike lanes on both sides of New River Inlet Road from 210 all the way to the north end.
Okay.
And the solution that DOT proposed was during the resurfacing of that road, they would just put in widen the road essentially a couple of feet on both sides to put in the bike lanes. My comment or question is, could we not get DOT during the paving process to possibly put more crown on the road to get the runoff rather than do it this way?
Or at least to help.
Because this is recorded, I'm going to answer it this way. I'm not partaking in your conversations with DOT, and I'm not going to speak for DOT, but as far as stormwater management goes, raising crowns on road does reduce street spread and is an easy solution to implement if you are regrading the road and widening it. In the process, if you're regrading it, widening it to put bike lanes in, it's a great opportunity to put in additional catch basins and other type of stormwater structures to help reduce flooding on the road.
So it would be, like you said, a coordinated effort with DOT to make sure that we come up with the most economical and wise solution.
It is their road, right?
Well, but also you said we're going to have to coordinate with DOT anyway, and I think that's your point. And so we're having the conversation with them. We ought to be considering all the options, right?
Well, then,
Well, and also you're raising the crown of the road and you're dumping the water off the road. That was exactly our problem after Florence, and I know that we're not designing this for hurricane events, but when we had the storm surge and all that water came over, that was my understanding of what had damaged, all that flooding had damaged our town park to the tune of about $800,000. So that's why those swells that were there, or that are there, were put there to begin with, was try to put some kind of buffer or some kind of protection for the town park. So it's not just a matter of getting the water off the road, it's what are you gonna do with that water once you get off the road and try to channel it either in a holding basin like the permeable pavers, or channeling it back into the wetlands, which is completely acceptable.
And to that, yes, so if you do mention adding the crown to the road, the other part of that conversation has to be how do you capture that water safely? And, right, yeah. How about the next slide? And let's go one more after that. Okay, so in our conversations and for these two projects, again, from the Lassie funding perspective, to apply for the planning, what we could do to take the plans that we currently have that we generated from the RCCP to go to construction. And this is going out to a publicly bid process and having a general contractor implement these proposed solutions. We've put together a high level application request that we would put in our application. So, and that's covering, and I think the question was asked, that's covering any additional level B survey we would have to get, the permitting required, any potential wetland delineation. If we're putting out to public bid, we do have to make a contract document, specification package, and professional services to make sure the plans are in a state we could put out to publicly bid, and then in the bidding process. So.
can I go, I still have one question, the bike lane is now on my mind. So, for these infiltration swales, is that basically just a ditch with rock in it? Like, what's on top of it?
French drain.
Right, but some French drains are actually covered because there's pipes taking the water somewhere else. Are these covered, or are these open?
These infiltration swales would have about 1 to 2 foot of sand medium mixture, and then have an under drain underneath it.
Okay.
So the water would flow and infiltrate, and that under drain would take that water out.
So if we expanded the road 4 feet there for the bike lane, can all of this easily be pushed back?
It could be on the other side, but you could expand the other side.
No, but the bike lane goes on both sides.
You're widening, you're only going to widen you're gonna widen it, but you can move it just what you want. When you're resurfacing, if they're gonna add a couple of feet, okay, so here's the center line.
I see what you're saying, and then they
See what
just
I'm saying?
restripe
Right,
it.
they might wanna, right, they would restripe the thing, so. That's a good question. Just, okay.
So I would
now we're gonna
recommend
get to-
coordination with DOT.
Just a real quick summary. One is, okay, right now there are no construction funds available. So the only thing that we would be applying for would be design and permitting, correct? Two is, that's fine. How much money, I'm assuming that you guys would want to be paid for doing the grant application,
Yes.
right? So how much, what I'm looking at is, how much money are we risking? Because let's just say that you're gonna, I think the number you guys
Up to
want is
15,000.
15,000.
Up to.
So if we as a town authorize $15,000, that would be the only money that we would be risking in terms of putting this out, and that's only if they accept. All right, so you're gonna write the grant application, and let's just say that there's no construction money, right? We would still have a set of plans and permits in theory in place without the obligation to go to construction for $1 million, which we don't have, right?
That's
So-
correct.
So if they then, so if we have a package, so again, my bottom line is, we're risking $15,000 to go forward with the process.
You're not gonna get permits with including that.
No, the grant writing's 15,000.
That's what I said.
Right, if we don't get the grant, we don't, what I'm asking is, what's the bottom line? If we don't get any money, if we're part of the 15% that doesn't get any money, the only thing we're risking is the $15,000, up to $15,000, we would be paying them to do the grant writing.
Correct.
Do you know the amount now? I know you were preparing for this meeting, you were gonna have the amount that we would be applying for through Lassie for these two particular projects.
There's values right there.
That's the full value? Okay,
Yes.
okay.
Now, to maybe a point of conversation is you can apply up to 400,000.
Well, that's where I was gonna go next. Okay, I'm just trying to get my hands around. We're asking the board to appropriate money for this. And I think we all agree as a board, we've got drainage issues in the town, right? So if we're saying for $15,000, we write a grant that in theory has at least, in probability has an 85% chance of getting some money, right?
Does the proposal, though, for the up to $15,000, if they expand the scope of that up to 400,000, does that change that amount?
So this proposal we provided you is for those two
Yeah, so
for
that
those two
amount, that
projects.
grant, that amount would increase then?
I would, if
To-
our scope increased, I would come back and maybe
To
ask
what?
for more money.
And what's
To
the-
what?
And you don't know that number.
I don't know what the
I'm just
scope's
trying to get a
increasing
handle on
to.
what he's asking us to commit to, and, because this, if it's gotta go out here by May 1st,
Well, I was actually gonna ask Alice to kind of summarize what.
12%, just under
Means-
12% of what they'd be asking for, if that total 127's the grant.
That's correct.
right, but you can't recover the grant application costs in the grant itself.
Right.
That's correct.
So it's just money at risk is what I'm asking.
Grand, which is if you look at it from
Right, and I'm just, and Brian, I'm just talking at a very high level, and I think she's gonna summarize it is, if you ask me, would we spend $15,000 to get a grant writing, to take a look, and even if the construction money's not available, we still have plans and permits, because we got this money, it seems to me that's a pretty good thing to have, kinda like we've talked with these projects. If you've got a plan and you've got a permit, and, you can get the money, but you're not, as long as we're not obligated to do $1 million worth of construction, and we're only risking 15,000, that sounds like a fairly decent trade-off.
Right,
Go
and to
ahead,
back
Summer.
up just a step, we talked about the resolution for the LASI funding, which I received and reviewed and then amended to take out being bound to construction costs. So I did send that to Brian for review today. So if you do choose to move forward with these two sites in particular, or if you decide to expand the scope of that to all the sites, that Brian has that, and he can provide comments on if that's feasible to go forward with. But it was reworded to take out the obligating us to the construction costs so that we can just get to a true shovel-ready project, or projects, I should say.
I mean, I'm fine with the substance of it, there's one type of it, well, it's a legal advice, is the only other observation I'll talk about that.
And then
Okay.
just one other question, I guess, for Alice, and it's a follow-up to what the mayor had said. Let's just say that we were fine with the $15,000, one of the things to consider is if we wanted to do all of the projects in this, and ask for the grant up to $400,000, how much more than 15,000 is it? And what are we comfortable, like, for example, if it was $2,000 more to do it all, we would all say, do it. If it's $100,000 more to do the rest of it, we'd say, don't do it. I have no clue what that range is in terms of the additional, I'm talking about for the grant writing itself, right? But, so if we had something that said we're comfortable up to X as a board, I don't know how that translates into what you can and can't get done. It's just a question.
So what do you need from the board today?
Consensus on number one, if you want to move forward with any of these projects, whether it be the two that was pulled as priorities or all of them, as far as the planning to take them to finish the design and permitting phase as they proposed. That's basically it, so that we can meet the May 1st deadline for the Lassie application. I will say, though, just to back up a step, that with the RCCP process, it was identified that there was 4 phases. They went through phase 3. There's phase 4, which was implementation of that program. I did fully vet that through last night, trying to figure out if I could do a grant application for just pulling the park with applying for permitting and construction. Mark worked with me yesterday to get the final numbers on that, and that came out to little over 399,000. Now,
I'm sorry, to do the park,
to just do the park, to do design, permitting, and construction. So we're talking about a different avenue. But the issue is that when the state rolled out with this funding, they announced that they would only be making awards in the $50,000 to $250,000 range. So I believe at that point that we would, if you chose to go in that direction, well, you would be gambling and maybe be able to see it through to construction fully with there's no match required in that grant as well. But I do think that you're asking a lot and it would probably be kicked out. And then you would then therefore miss this opportunity with the Lassie funding. So that would be my recommendation at this point. If you're going to proceed, is to go with the Lassie funding to take it to design and permitting. Then we can seek grants at that point in time when we have something shovel ready to go forward with construction.
And it's, so for these 2 priority projects, which you have talked with us about in many board meetings, that these were like the top 2, it's 15,000 to write the grant for both of those, total 15.
Yes,
Up to.
15,000.
Okay. Okay. Do we why don't we just go around the board and see? So Alderman Plettel, do you have any concerns with the grant process?
I would like to go with what the town manager has suggested. I think the Lassie funding one is the way to go. These 2 projects, these are the 2 worst sites in our town.
Alderman Leonard?
First, I have a question to the attorney. Do you have any concerns?
One thing I want to discuss in closed session, with respect to the contract that goes along with this resolution, it's only not only, it's a $15,000 contract, but there's a venue selection of Charlotte. If we had to litigate it, you'd eat up close to $15,000 just having to deal with the fact that it's in Charlotte. Given the nature of this work, the time sensitive of this work, I'm willing to, just wanted to bring it to your attention, willing to make the concession that, I'm not gonna arm wrestle W.K. Dixon to make the venue Onslow County.
Having heard that and understanding that, I agree with Connie that we should proceed with not to exceed the 15,000.
Alderman Fontana?
I agree. Let's go with up to 15,000.
Alderman Grant?
And proceed with the Lassie funding grant
right.
application.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I agree with all that stuff. My only caveat would be if they come back to us and say they can do every project for another $5,000 or something like that.
But that would be considered then and brought to the board at that point, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, if he come, what I'm saying is if we were going to do a consensus or a motion, and they came back and said, for example, we can do the entire, every one of these projects for $20,000, up to 20,000, I would say, fine.
The grant.
Right. No, just what we'd be at risk for. Otherwise, I'm 100%. If the only way we can proceed, the best way to proceed is what you suggested, then I'm fine with that.
And I'm also fine with what's been presented too. Hi, Mike Benson, I'm sorry. You're so quiet over there today.
I have been. Yeah, I agree that spending the 15,000 to get the grant writing done is okay. But my one concern, and I've been a part of this program from the get-go, is Phase 3 on the NCRCCP website, Phase 3 Engineering Design. The primary objective of Phase 3 of RCCP is to provide funding to assist communities with the engineering and design of prioritized projects identified in their planning. And my concern here is it appears that we really didn't get that in Phase 3. We got some solutions, but we didn't get the engineering and design part of it.
And this is where I would respectfully disagree with that. So what, as part of the design package, we did provide engineering plans, and there's design, and engineering thought process was put through those plans that we put together. And in fact, if a town chooses to implement those, they could go through the permitting on their own to permit those sites. Permitting was not included within that. And they could use their own forces to build. We have enough information on the design plans. They could use their own forces to build whatever the solutions they choose for.
Yeah, it's just been a point of confusion for me.
Sure. To further clarify, what we're proposing here is to say if a town chooses to not use their own forces to construct those and wants to put it out for publicly bid for a general contractor, that requires additional effort to put together a construction contract documents, technical specifications, surveys, and just that additional information that would a contractor would have tied with liability for.
So, Mike, what are your thoughts on the consensus for the grant?
I'm fine with the 15 for the grant.
So it sounds like you have everybody agreeing to move forward with up to $15,000 for the grant for these two projects.
Okay.
I will provide Alice with the cost on what it would be for all the, that wasn't something her and I discussed, so
Yep.
I'll get that back to you. And then second to note, if we were to proceed with this, we would need a resolution.
Right. And the resolution's been prepared, and if, minus a typo, I think we're good. We can provide that today.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Sure thing. Any other slides, I think? Oh, yeah, well, there we go. We covered the questions. So, okay, thank you for your time. If we wanted to get further in the engineering, we could have gone there.
Personal risk.
Okay, well, while so you've already looked at this, right? So do we have a motion then? That's what we need is a motion for us to go ahead and approve the resolution for this grant project.
For the 15, well, yes.
15,000 up to.
That, the resolution is for them to proceed with the design and permitting and for the two proposed sites.
You mean the grant application for those?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Are we
It's
all-
worded in there.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and then the next item Aldermen want to, is the open forum. I don't know if we have anybody signed up for that. Is there anybody that would like to speak?
It's not that big of a deal, it's just that it should be aldermen.
The next item
Okay.
is the attorney's report. And then, I just have something brief for the mayor's report. I will tell you, it was very interesting to go up to Washington, and just see our government in work. It was a very successful trip, and I wanted to thank Alderman Leonard for all the time that he put into, his thoughts and just continuing to try and help us remove Cobra from North Topsail. I was very disappointed we had to cancel the concert, as everybody was that had worked on it. There was a tremendous amount of work that went into trying to line up the food trucks and the beer trucks and figure out the parking. And Susan's not in here right now, but Susan Meyer was a tremendous help with that as well. We talked about potentially pushing it. We had some opportunities to have the concert in the fall, but then we're in hurricane season. So then that did not really sound like that great of an idea either. So what we'd like to do, and what I briefly spoke with Alderman Plettle about, is regrouping to see what type of small things we can do in our park for the summer season. I did email Kyle and asked him for Surf City. They have a list of vendors that they use all the time in their Soundside Park. So, you know, maybe we can have something to at least start with. I just want everybody to know we're still working on it. I also said on social media we're looking for volunteers. So if anybody has ideas or wants to help, then please get with myself or Alderman Plettle. Okay, that's all I have. So I will start with Mayor Pro Tem Benson.
Yeah, I'd like to second what you said, Mayor, to thank town manager and the town staff and Susan Meyer for all the work that they put into the concert, even though we weren't able to actually have it. And hope everybody has a good holiday weekend. Thank you.
I want to thank everybody for being here and for watching online. Be sure to join us for our budget meetings. Also, I am extraordinarily happy with Alice for her tireless work to get that shrimp trawler cut down or especially receive funds. Thank you so much. I know it's been a really burden for you to have to be busy. Mayor, she did that very well. Anybody interested in being on the Parks and Rec Committee, just get a hold of us. You don't even have to be a permanent resident. We welcome anybody. And I also want to thank the mayor, the town manager, and Alderman Leonard for their DC trip. The air in Cobra for our town has been a burden for years and years, and you guys have really brought it forward, especially Mr. Leonard, who has had the historical knowledge of it, and you guys have worked tirelessly, and I'm so thrilled with HR 2437. Hope it keeps going forward. Get a hold of your representatives. Have a happy and safe Easter. We're already starting to see visitors, already a lot of people on the road. Can't wait for those bike lanes. And May 1st, turtle season begins. Don't forget to turn out your oceanfront lights and remind your visitors. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Leonard.
Yeah, just a few things. Happy Easter to everybody. Appreciate all the help from staff and the mayor and the manager on the trip to Washington. We've just started this. It's nowhere near in the can. We've been this close before. We just got to keep pushing through our elected officials in Washington and their staffs to keep this thing alive and keep them focused on it for us. I think one of the mistakes we've made in the past is relying on others to carry that part of the water, and we've got to do that ourselves. And to that extent, I was on the phone with Ray Celeste on my way here from home this morning. Three other things. North NC Byways has a board of directors meeting April 17th, followed by NC Byways Spring Conference 11 to 12 May in Emerald Isle, North Carolina. I know that the clerk has sent out to all the board members a request for for RSVP to that. And speaking of other RSVPs, we've all received invites to the Marine Corps Base Spring Community Reception on Wednesday, April 26th. And if you're not going, even if you're not going, the right thing to do is to RSVP to that so they know what's going on. Again, thanks to everybody. Thanks again to the mayor and especially to Alice. You did a really good job up there for us, and I'm really glad you're part of the team. Appreciate everything.
Thank you.
Yes, I'd like to echo what Alderman Pledl said. I was walking yesterday on New River Inlet Road, and there's a lot more traffic. I just would caution everybody to watch out for pedestrians. Remember, on the marked crosswalks, it is state law to stop if you see people crossing the road. We just need to be very cautious and watching for pedestrians and for the bicyclists, as the season has already begun.
Attended the county commissioners meeting on Monday, and the highlight of that is they are getting a lot of pressure on their budget. They actually are going to try to go to Raleigh to increase the sales tax, which I don't know that that's going to be successful. I wish them luck on that, because they're trying to figure out what to do with property taxes. So we'll see. Thank Tom and the mayor and Alice for going up to DC. In another life, I have spent literally hundreds and hundreds of days in DC, and anybody thinks that's a fun trip has never gone and done that trip or met with Congress or done those type of things. And so thank you all, and I'm glad I'm not doing that in my current life. Happy Easter, everybody, and thank you. And again, complimenting Alice and actually her staff in terms of the financial reporting and the budget stuff. I think we've really come a long way, and I think that was clear last week when we met with Mr. Carter. Thanks.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a closed session to consult with the town attorney.
Pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11, subsection 3.
So can I have a motion?
So moved. What he said.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. And there is cake.